Well, I'd like to welcome you once again to the Catholic Center, and on a very happy occasion for the 1.2 billion Catholics around the world and the 240,000 or so Catholics here in central and southern Indiana. We share the joy of the people in the Piazza San Pietro in St. Peter's Square at the announcement of the election of Pope Francis, the first in a lot of ways, and we'll get to that in a moment. Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio, the Archbishop of the capital of Argentina, Buenos Aires. I think a question that probably I can anticipate is, are we surprised by his election? I'd say yes, we're surprised. Even though several cardinals after the conclave in 2005 made it clear that Cardinal Bergoglio received a lot of support, the fact of his age and the fact that he didn't carry the field the last time led a lot of people to believe that he really wasn't in the running. Now, I think you saw that footage from St. Peter's Square when he came out to greet and really spoke directly to the Romans first, because after all, his first title is Bishop of Rome, and he was speaking to his people, the people of his new diocese. But of course, the rest of the world was listening as well, and I think that some of the firsts or unique aspects of this election will become clear rather quickly. First is the choice of a non-European. Pope Francis represents the first time in 1,200 years that a non-European has been elected Pope. The last non-European was a Syrian 1,200 years ago. Now, this certainly is unique because it's the first person on this side of the Atlantic to be elected, the first person from Latin America, the first member of the Jesuit, the Society of Jesus, a major Catholic order represented here in the Archdiocese at Birdwell High School. So we send our congratulations to the Jesuits as well as the faculty and students up on 86th Street. And I hope they'll invite Pope Francis to visit quickly. A few other unique aspects would be his name. His name, he'll be Francis the First or just Pope Francis. And some might say, why would a Jesuit pick the name of the founder of the Franciscan order? Now, I would say we best leave the Pope to explain it, but if you ask me today, I would guess it has to do with an experience, some sort of a mystical experience that Francis had as a young monk or young religious. He was praying in a destroyed church, a small chapel in Umbria, not too far from Assisi, called San Damiano. And in San Damiano, there was the church was in ruins. There was just a crucifix on the sanctuary wall. As Francis was praying, he felt that the Christ who was present there in his suffering said to him, "Francis, rebuild my church." Now, Francis initially misunderstood. He thought he meant the physical chapel there. He began to pile rocks on top of each other to try and shore up the walls. And Christ said, "Francis, rebuild my church." And he realized that the particular mission that Francis and his followers would have would be to be a life-giving source within the church and the particular struggles that it was facing in the 13th century. And in fact, the Franciscans did bring a new energy to the body of Christ. So I'm guessing that's why he chose that name, Francis. Now, he may give you an entirely different reason. Do I know him? Yes, I've met Cardinal Bergoglio several times. We were members of the 2005 Synod of Bishops and members of the same small group, so we sat next to each other for the better part of 4 weeks. And I found him to be, he lived up to his reputation as far as being a man of great simplicity. He's the Cardinal Archbishop of one of the major archdioceses in Latin America, but he lived in a small apartment. He drove a VW or took a bus to work, and he cooked his own meals. So that all led my mother to make him her candidate in 2005. And I told the Cardinal later on that he was my mother's candidate. He got quite a laugh out of that. He said, I didn't know your mother knew who I was. So we, of course, rejoice that the Lord has given us this this holy and learned figure to lead the church, and I know everyone in the Archdiocese joins with me in promising our obedience and our cooperation to Pope Francis. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Was this decision made faster than usual? Was this a very fast decision?
Well, it wasn't any faster than the last time. It was faster than I had expected. I thought, because from all indications there were not front runners or a front runner, that it would have taken more than, I believe it was 5 ballots, was it? And before the white smoke was seen. So I think that it certainly pales in the face of some conclaves, like in 1774, it was 164 days, I think, and 265 ballots. Things were a little clearer this time.
Some people thought this would be a chance for a younger person to step out and lead the church, give it new energy. Do you feel, I don't want to say a missed opportunity, but do you feel as though he has a challenge there of reviving the church?
Well, he does have a challenge. I mean, he certainly has that challenge, and as you maybe are insinuating, at the age of 76, does he have the energy to do it? Well, I think that this is something that the Cardinals must have contemplated, and I would say some points in his favor would be that he's been the head of a major, and still was the head of a major archdiocese. And anybody at that level knows that it's not a one-man show, that you have to bring other people into the leadership and count on their expertise and their initiative. Because he's a member of a religious order, and this is he's worked with other people closely in his own order, and he has been a provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina. So I think all of that suggests to me that he's used to cooperating with other people. Now, whether he will have the vigor of a John Paul II who was elected at 58, I think that's probably not going to be the case. But don't forget that the Pope that arguably made the biggest difference in the Catholic Church in the last century or so was John the 23rd, was elected at a much older age than Francis, and he surprised the Church a great deal by convoking the Vatican Council. Another question.
What challenges do you think face him? You said he's the first one of the New World. Maybe many think that to bring about a change in the church. And so what challenges do you think that he faces?
Well, some of the challenges he faces, he already knows, and he knows very well. In 2007, in a meeting of the bishops of Latin America, he said that continent, Latin America, had the biggest divide between the rich and the poor of any continent, and had done the least to really address it. So he's not afraid to name things. So I think that some challenges, like the question of poverty, the question of inequality and economics, not only among people but among nations, are things that he knows firsthand and he's experienced. I think what he'll probably have to count on others to help understand is the reality of these 1.2 billion people, because the challenges that the Church faces in the People's Republic of China are a little bit different than they face in Argentina, and certainly in Africa, where the Church is growing exponentially. It's facing at the same time new challenges. So I think he will, and here in the States, I mean, if you ask people, as I'm sure you're going to do, on the sidewalk, well, what do you think the challenges are of the Pope? Well, I'll name some very specific things that are real challenges as we understand them here in the States, but they may not be the same in India, for example. So yeah, they're all I can say is, having been privileged to work closely with a couple of popes, it's a very, very difficult job. And I'm sure that Cardinal Bergoglio wasn't campaigning in the slightest for this, because it's very difficult. Yes, Sean.
Did you have a chance to see his address to the people of Rome and the world, and were you, if so, were you impressed by either any gestures he made, because like he bowed and asking for the prayers of the people, but he also said some things. I was just wanting to see if you had any reaction to any of those things.
Well, I think it was significant first that he was aware of his responsibility to the Roman people, the Bishop of Rome. That's his diocese. And so, I think as a diocesan bishop, you like to hear that, because that's, one reason why bishops wear a ring is to show their special relationship to the church they serve. I said, and secondly, the fact that he asked the people to pray a blessing on him, showed a certain simplicity and humility that I think was genuine, at least the times I've met him. He has no airs or sort of pretensions about himself. So as much as I saw of the feed from Rome, those were two things that impressed me.
What about the opportunity on the other side of this with Argentina and the opportunity in Latin America?
Well, it's a great opportunity you see, people would like to see the church in Latin America in terms of statistics, how many are Catholic, how many used to be Catholic. I mean, those are important, but Mark Twain used to say that there are three kinds of lies. There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. And so statistics could be read a lot of different ways. What I think coming from Latin America, there's a certain vibrancy in the church. In those, despite all the problems the church faces there, John Paul II used to call Latin America El Continente de la Esperanza, the continent of hope. And there is a certain real hope there because of the vitality of the church. And so he's not going to come in sort of, I think, moping or with a defeatist attitude. No, he's coming from a very, very vibrant and a going concern, if you will, in American English.
As much as we've always speculated about new popes and whether they're going to be liberal and change things or stick to the conservative old guard, how would you assess the new pope?
Yeah, well, I probably would first question those labels. I just think it's a more complicated office than, than can be pinned down and put into a liberal camp or a conservative camp. I think on some issues he's going to seem conservative, because he's part of his service is to transmit a tradition that's been around for 2,000 years and based on the Word of God. On other things, he'll probably rankle a few folks with what would seem to be, if he points out that the wealth of some nations is predicated on the poverty of others. Well, I think there are going to be some people that wouldn't want to hear that. I'm not putting words in his mouth. I'm just saying that I think that as we get to know him better, we'll find it less conservative or liberal, but probably more complicated.
You mentioned earlier that he may have taken Francis's name because of that mystical experience that St. Francis of Assisi had in hearing the call to rebuild the church. We're in a time now where a lot of focus is on the new evangelization, reaching out to people who were at one evangelizing cultures that were once strongly Christian or Catholic and that aren't so much now. Do you think that there is something possibly connected there, not just simply reaching back to history, but there's a current context to taking that name?
Yeah, I think, Francis is seen as one of the great preachers of the gospel. It's sometimes attributed to him, but I think a little bit inaccurately that he says, preach the gospel at all times, but use words when necessary. In other words, walk the talk. And maybe that's another reason. Something that just occurred to me, Francis is also one of the patrons of Europe. And Europe is certainly Western Europe is